I hate that we're coming to the end of this series, Goliath Must Fall. What a great journey we've been on together. And it's all predicated on this idea. It's predicated on the idea that Jesus' desire for your life is that you would have life to the full. Hello? I'll let y'all get away with being a little quiet during the other part, but not going to work during this part because this is the last gathering before the Sabbath break, and this is my last message before the Sabbath break. So you're going to have to step up just a little bit. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So we have to lean together. We have to all lean in together with this idea that there's any voice in your head that's saying you're not going to do it, you can't accomplish it, you're always going to have to live with it the way it is, things are never going to change. If that voice is in our head, it is not the voice of Jesus. So that's our first response is, I don't know where that's coming from, but I'm certain that it's not coming from Jesus. Because Jesus came to this earth to do the work so that we could live not just some kind of life, but that we could live an abundant life. He said, the thief comes to steal and to kill and destroy, but I have come that you might have life and have it to the full. It is not God's plan for you to live with some big giant standing in the middle of your life, demoralizing you day by day by day, and diminishing God's glory, robbing God's glory in your life. And so we've looked at a few giants over the past few weeks, but as we come to this concluding message today, it's never more important that we understand that our freedom and God's glory are forever interwoven into one story, and God does want us to live free. He wants some of you to walk out of this building tonight in the freedom that you never thought you could have. Because he's already done the work. He's already killed the giant. Somebody said again to me this week, I think we got the title of the series wrong. It's really hard to have that conversation 5 weeks into the series, but they said the title is Goliath Has Fallen. You've proclaimed that every single week. I said, I know, that would be a good title because Jesus has already taken down all the giants we face in our life. So that would be a good title, Goliath Has Fallen. And somebody else keeps saying, no, the title should be Goliath Will Fall. It's hopeful, it's positive, it's faith-filled, it's safe for the whole family. It's a good title. Goliath will fall. It's going to happen. Trust me, it's going to happen. Those are two good titles, but the best title for me is the one that has the fuel inside of it that says, no, this giant in my life that is standing over me, that has fallen because of what Christ has done and will fall because I'm going to put what Christ has done into motion in my life. But this thing must go down. It must stop talking to me because God wants me to live free and God wants to get the glory of being the liberator of my life. And this giant has got to go down. Until that's in the furnace, until that's down in the furnace, we're going to dilly-dally around. And we're going to listen to the lies that say, no, it's not going to happen. Don't get too excited about Louie's message. Don't let Louie's enthusiasm sort of spill over on you. You're dealing with something so big, it's just not ever going to change. And to that, Jesus says, forget about Louie. Listen to me. I came that you might have life to the full. And that's possible. Even in the face of this giant that we're talking about today, this giant of addiction. This giant that stands over us and demoralizes us day after day after day. And this giant that steals from God his glory. When we say that word, addiction, the tone in the room changed. And instantly, our minds go to the big addictions, alcoholism, drug addiction. And we go to the big ones that people go away to rehab. They go away to treatment for. But what I want to say today is I think that a whole bunch of us in this house right now are struggling with addiction. And I'm not belittling the big ones. Our family has been through the big ones. And we've been there with you. So if you're looking at me today going, I don't know if you know what you're talking about. No, I know what I'm talking about. We've been in those that go on not for months and not for years, but for multiple years, where you get to some place you're like, this is a dead end. This is it. It's not going to go past here. It can't get worse than this. And then there's a little glimmer of hope, and everybody rallies, and there's just like this little bit of joy for a moment, and then it all goes black again, and you think, oh no, this is further down than we were last time, only to have another little glimmer of hope, and to do that over and over, year in, year out. We've been down that road as a family. And I understand that these big giants of addiction are real. I'm not taking them lightly at all today. But what I am saying is I don't want you to sit back or me to sit back and go, well, I'm not struggling with A and I'm not struggling with B, so I really don't have any addictions in my life. We've got a lot of drug choices going on in the house right now. Some of them are alcohol. Some of you, that's your deal. That's your thing. That's your drug. It is real. And some of you are alcoholics, and that's real also. And for some people, it is drugs, and it's wide spectrum of drugs. For somebody, it's weed. And that's just what helps you cope through life. And you're addicted to weed. And you rationalize that today by saying, well, I can legally do that in a couple of states, and eventually I will legally be able to do it here. It's not the point of whether it's legal or illegal. The point is it something you have to survive in life? And if it is, it's an addiction in your life. For some people, it's far on the other end. It's meth. It's crazy. And for other people, it's coke in the middle. Molly keeps the party going. Painkillers of all kinds, oxys floating around in the house. And then you just get to the other side of the medication spectrum, the stuff your doctor actually gives you. There's a lot of addiction going on to a lot of different kind of drugs in the house. Some people are addicted to money. Can't get enough of it. I just have to have more of it. There are people in the house that are addicted to sex, all kinds. There are people all in the house tonight addicted to porn. Huge giant just standing up in the middle of the room saying, you're never going to be free of this. Demoralizing you. And yes, God is great, but he's not great enough to free me from this. People in this room are addicted to stuff. A lot of the stuff we can't cope with deep down in our hearts. A lot of people's means isn't to go get a drink or to go take a hit of something. Their means is just to go buy something. And they can't stop themselves, and they go to Nordstrom and buy something else. You're like, I don't shop at Nordstrom. Great, okay, so you go to Target and you buy something else. You're like, I don't even shop at Target. Okay, Walmart's open 24 hours a day for a reason. And sometimes when people can't deal, they just got to get a buggy in front of them. And I don't even know what I need. I'm just going to go up and down the aisles until I find it. And when I find it, I'm going to buy it. And for a little while, it's going to take my mind off of what I don't want my mind to be on. Our society is so clueless that we even name this stuff, and it's laughably called retail therapy. It's a drug. For some people, it's a drug. Accomplishments is a drug. You got the certificate at work. You got the promotion in your area. You were the regional sales manager. You got the award at the conference. You got the commendation in the email newsletter. You were recognized by the panel of judges. Your GPA is X, Y, or Z. You always come in first. You're always achieving at this. And every one of those accomplishments, every time you get your hands on one, you ask the question within the hour, what's the next one you can get beyond this one? And that accomplishment becomes a drug. Adrenaline is a drug for a lot of people. I mean, people like that, they're just adrenaline junkies. They cannot be at rest. They've just got to be hyped up all the time. They wake up and drink Red Bull. They drink Red Bull for lunch. They drink a 5-hour energy boost in between, Red Bull for dinner. They are either jumping off a building, skydiving, bungee jumping, riding a bicycle into a pool off the second story of a building. They just got to be doing something crazy all the time. Starbucks loves these people. They're rolling in there, getting the double shot, the triple shot. Just go ahead and put it in here. I mean, they got to be hyped up all the time. Some people are addicted to pain. And if it doesn't hurt, it's not helping. And so they put themselves in painful situations on purpose because they can't deal with life. And so they hurt themselves. People in this room are addicted to people. Somebody in here is addicted to a person. You didn't hear from him today, and you are jacked up right now, and you are sitting there right now listening to me and looking at your phone. Why isn't he texting me? Why isn't he texting me? He still hasn't texted me. I don't know why he hasn't texted me. And then when that person's gone away, the withdrawals are a killer from that drug. I mean, there's all kinds of drugs in this house. Stimulation is a drug. Come on, we're living in the most overstimulated generation of people in America ever in the history of the world. We sat next to a family the other day at dinner, mom, dad, 3 kids. The dad was checking email or doing stock deals or talking to his team or something on email on his BlackBerry under the table the whole time they were sitting there. I could see mom completely over the shoulder. She's on Facebook the whole time. She's checking everything out on Facebook, you know, with the flick, what people are doing, and she's just going down through Facebook and checking out what all her friends are doing that night. And they're out having a wonderful family dinner and checking out on what the other families are doing. Other kid over here is like Candy Crush going on. This other kid's got some kind of thing. I don't know. He's turning his iPad side to side. I don't know if he's driving down a race or whatever. Other kid has actually got headphones on at the table. I think he's partnered up with another kid in Tokyo, and they are invading a city somewhere, destroying cities and people and blowing human beings up at the dinner table. I see every now and then his eyes just light up like, just killed another one. Yeah, No kidding. The server comes by and says, could I get anybody something else to drink? And everybody at the table instantaneously kind of looks up and goes, oh, yeah, we're at a restaurant. Sorry. Yeah, no, we're good. We're good. Thank you very much. We're so overstimulated. I mean, we have 900 channels and we're bored. Can I just say an old person thing for a second? Are there any old people make it to the 5 o'clock? Listen. I'm looking at all these young people cheering. It's like, no, I mean like me old, like old people. Don't you remember the days when you were a kid and your parents had to go somewhere and they said, all right, you're going in your room. And they locked the door, did your door have the lock on the outside and the inside like mine did, Just kidding. And you're like... and they just put you in there, and it's like, the toilet paper roll, we just got down to the end of the toilet paper, and they just take that last little piece off and give you the roll, and it's like, good luck, this is what you're getting, we'll be back in 3 hours. And you're like, you're the happiest person in the world. It's you and a toilet paper roll in your room by yourself. No cable TV, no computer, no cell phone, no nothing. Toilet paper roll. And now I'm telling you, a family can't go and spend an hour together. Because we're addicted, people. We are addicted to all manner of things. And the reason I think is because we were created to be dependent creatures. We were created by God and for God. We are not created independent. We're created dependent on God, interdependent on God, and on each other. That's the way God set this whole thing up. And we get our value from the fact that we were created by God, and we get our purpose by the fact that we were created for God. Everything we need for a successful journey on planet Earth comes in that phrase. We are created by God and for God. That means that we have a dependent tendency inside of us because we were made for God. And that's what I think's underneath some of our addictive tendencies. We just got to get it all pieced together right so that we don't get gypped out of what we're supposed to be dependent on by something less that is not going to do for us what God intended to do for us in the first place. And I'll tell you, I think the top addiction in the house tonight, for my money, the number one addiction going on in the place tonight is I believe that we are addicted to the approval of other people. If you just said in your mind, well, I'm not, then you are. Because some of you went, well, not me. Well, why'd you say that? Why did you feel compelled to let us all know silently, immediately, that you were not addicted to other people's opinions, and who cares? Why'd you tell us? People who tell you, I don't care what you think, are saying to you, translation, it really matters a lot to me what you think. And I believe that deep down in our hearts is a desire to be approved by other people, and I think that's probably the number one drug rocking this house right now. And you know, social media figured it out somehow. They created this monster called Instagram, which, footnote, I said before, I like social media. I think it can do a lot of great things. It can keep families connected. It can keep friends connected from other continents. It can keep the church connected. It can help you celebrate other people's lives. It can help us celebrate publicly what God is doing in our friends' lives and our families' lives. And it also is a great way of advancing the kingdom. But it can become an addictive drug because Instagram figured it out this way. Here's the way it works. I post a photograph. It's one of my best photographs. I try hard because there's some other good photographs out there. I've seen them on my Instagram feed, Joe Bram. And so I'm looking at these other photographs and I'm thinking, okay, I got to do a good photograph. I remember seeing somebody once and they went to Paris, and when they were in Paris, they went over to so-and-so and got their head by so-and-so and got so-and-so. I'm going to try to do that picture because that was a good picture. And then Instagram gives me filters. It's easy, Mom and Dad. All you got to do is scroll along the bottom. You want Valencia? You want Hudson? You want Inkwell? What do you want? You just pick you a filter. If you got the upgraded Instagram, you can do your own editing in there, and then you post that to the world. Here I am, people. Here's my cat. Oh, I just happened to be in front of my brand new car. How coincidental was that? And then we wait. Because Instagram figured it out. They said, we're living in an addictive culture of people who need the approval of others, so we're going to put a little box down here that has four-letter word in it. Like. And we post our pic, and we hang out our shingle, and then we wait. Refresh. Wait a minute. I don't want to. The longer you wait, the better your odds. Refresh. Is the internet working? I think it posted. And then Instagram puts a clock on the top up here. Yep, you've been on for 6 minutes, buddy. And you got nothing. Nothing. And then you get happy or really angry. And I haven't seen anybody lose it yet, but I got a feeling it's coming. And somebody's just going to start posting on their own Instagram this comment. Dear followers, all 278 of you, I don't know what is up with you right now, but either you are all asleep or you all instantaneously went blind, or you all need to get busy and figure out that I just posed a cat for 30 minutes and posted a picture with a pretty darn good filtering job and editing job on my Instagram. If you will check your last 6 Instagrams, I happen to have liked every single one of them. You, however, haven't liked any of my Instagrams, and I need to know what that's about right now, because I need you to get busy. I need you to get your fingers out. I need you to figure out how it works. I need you to get up the nerve, whatever it takes, and I need you to see this little deal over here. I need you to double tap, and I need a little heart going on this Instagram picture, and I need that right now. Maybe it's just me. Why? Because this is a setup for people who need the approval of other people. And if Instagram for us is a way to celebrate people, share life together around the world, advance the gospel, it's great. But if it's where you're getting your approval, and if it's your drug, then Instagram is going to kill you. And here's the other side of the story, that it's really not about Instagram. Some people say to me, well, I'm getting off Instagram because, it's bad for you. And I'm like, well, that's a good step as long as you ask the question, what is it that Instagram is masking in me that I don't want to deal with? Because under the alcohol and under the drugs and under the materialism and under the accomplishment and under the money and under the sex and under the porn and under all the things that maybe we definitely need to start dealing with is usually something else under the surface. And not all the time. Now, I've said this in every one of these deals. I am not Dr. Phil. I am not a psychologist. I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a trained counselor. So I'm not giving professional advice. But I'm telling you that underneath the drug, most of the time, is a person. It is somebody in our life that has strolled into our world, and they have made us feel rejected. They have inflicted pain on us, emotional, psychological pain, physical pain, relational pain, business pain on our lives. They have made us feel like we're not good enough. And so there's a sense of inadequacy that got branded on our lives. We talked about this before in the other giants. They belittled us. Maybe they betrayed us. They abandoned us. Underneath the drugs is a fear of failure. I just can't cope, and I need something to help me because I'm so afraid I'm going to fail that I've just got to get something to give me a little more courage. There's loneliness underneath the surface. And unless we're willing to look underneath the drug and to figure out what it is and talk about what it is that's in our heart, the person, the thing, the situation, the circumstance, and face up to whatever that is, the giant of addiction is not going to fall in our lives. Because here's the way it works. As soon as we feel vulnerable, okay, vulnerability is the biggest negative going in our world. And nobody wants to be vulnerable. And as soon as we think we are, as soon as we feel like we're weak, as soon as we feel like we're unable, we try to cover up. And we try to mask what's really true about us. I love the story we've been digging in for these last few weeks together, 1 Samuel 17. So powerful. The army of the Philistines on one side of the valley of Elah, and the army of Israel is on the other side. David comes to bring supplies to his brothers. Goliath's been coming out for 40 days and 40 nights and taunting the armies of Israel. David overhears what's going on, and David gets ready to engage the battle. And look what he says in verse 32. He comes to King Saul, this teenage boy named David, 1 Samuel 17, and he says, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant," he says this to the king, "will go and fight him." Now that sounds like a good idea to me if I'm Saul, because I got a whole army over here for 40 days and 40 nights who's been doing exactly nothing. And now I've got somebody who at least says, "Don't worry, everybody chill out. I'm going to go take on the giant." And the first response he gets, David, from Saul is verse 33. Saul replied, why don't you read this with me, these words? "You are not able." Can you say that with me? You are not able. The first thing he gets back is, you can't do that. And then he goes on to explain why. He said, you're not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a boy. Therefore, let me accentuate your weaknesses so that I can explain to you why this is not going to happen the way that you think it is. You are only a boy, and he has been a fighting man from his youth. And so what does that mean? It means all of a sudden everybody realizes this kid wants to go and have a go with Goliath, but look how vulnerable he is. He's a little bitty kid. He doesn't have any experience fighting giants. He's never gone up against someone like Goliath before. He's just a little boy, and he's not able to do what he thinks he can do. And so what does man do? The little kid says, I'm ready to go. And then men says, okay, maybe so. And so here's Saul's reply. Oh, David replies first. Let me give you David's reply, and then we'll jump back. So verse 34, and so Saul says, you're not able to do this. David says, hello, let me give you some more information. So David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. And when a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it. I struck it. I rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I love this. I seized it by its hair. I struck it and I killed it. Your servant, don't you love the respect, by the way? He just got totally dissed by the king, and he keeps honoring him and saying, I'm your servant. That's a beautiful lesson of life by somebody who is walking in the favor of God right there. Yeah, Saul says, hey, you can't do it. You're too young. You're not able. You're not going to be able to do this. And he didn't go, yo, bro. He said, excuse me, your servant once took on a lion, and your servant once took on a bear. And then he comes down to the middle, and he says it again, verse 30, your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me, so it's not him, obviously, it's God, who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said, go, and the Lord be with you. That's true. If the Lord killed a lion and the Lord gave you the ability to kill a bear, then by all means, go kill Goliath, and the Lord be with you. But Saul couldn't rest there with the proclamation of the goodness of God. Saul had to add to that the thinking of man. And so here's what he says to him. He says, okay, go, and the Lord be with you. But just in case, verse 38, Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. And David fastened on his sword, Saul's sword, over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. So what happened? David is vulnerable. He says, I'm going as I am. Yes, I'm a kid. Yes, I'm a boy. And yes, I never killed a giant. But I am going out there right now. And then man said, you can't go out there in a vulnerable position. We've got to cover you with some protection. We've got to suit you up and make you look stronger and look more protected than you actually are. And that's exactly the way it works in your life and my life. And it's all a result of the fall in the garden. The story opens up for us, Genesis chapter 2, the last verse, pretty happy verse for some people anyway. The last verse of chapter 2 says, hello, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. And then look at the conclusion. The man and his wife were both naked. Now, it's always better when they're both naked, a man and a wife, a husband and a wife. I mean, it's always better that way. They were both naked, and they felt no shame. You telling me not one person's going to amen that? Not one single person is going to go, yes, thank you, Lord. They were both naked, but the beauty of it was they were not ashamed. You can be naked and be ashamed. I don't know, maybe somebody here got in that position this weekend. You got naked with somebody, but with it came the shame. And in God's economy, the way God sets it up, they're naked and they're not ashamed. How beautiful is that? They got no clothes to worry about. They got no wardrobe problems. They don't have any body image issues. They're not walking around like, hi, how are you this morning? Good to see you. Yes, that's awesome. I'm going to get some breakfast. Don't look at me when I walk away, okay? No, it's just, they're just naked, or naked as we say around here. And they're not ashamed. But sin enters the story. And as sin enters the story, look what happens in chapter 3, verse 10. So God comes down, as he always would, to walk with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day. And he can't find them on this particular day, not because he doesn't know where they are, but because they don't know where they are. And he says, where were you? And Adam answers in verse 10. He said, I heard you in the garden. Read this with me. And I was what? I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. And that's exactly what we do when we feel vulnerable in a broken world. It's like, man, I don't want people to see me. I'm afraid of what people will think if they see me. So I'm going to hide me. I don't want to be vulnerable. So I'm going to cover up. I don't want people to know that I'm not as strong as you think I am. I don't want people to know that I'm afraid right now. I don't want people to know that I'm craving attention right now. I don't want people to know how insecure I am in this moment. I don't want people to know how angry I am right now. I don't want people to know how tired I am or how weary I am. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover up my vulnerability because I don't want anybody to see me like this. And in fact, if I could just get another drink or two, I'm going to be a lot better in this meeting right now. I'm going to this dinner with these friends, and if I can just get a drink before we get there, it's going to give me a little more courage when we walk through that door, and I can sort of cover over my vulnerability. If I can just get another hit, or if I can get a new outfit, or if I can get another accomplishment to talk about, I can kind of mask the fact that I have some vulnerabilities in my heart. And that's what always happens. And see, the deal with the Garden of Eden, if I can just set it up this way, what happened was before the fall, Adam and Eve had intimacy with God, they had peace with God, and they had a place with God. Sin entered the story, and they were isolated from God, and they no longer had peace with God or a place with God. They had a place with men, and they had hostility with men. So they went from intimacy with God to isolation from God, from a place with God to a place with men, from peace with God to hostility with men. And when we step out of intimacy with God and a place with God and peace with God, we instantly find what they found, which is comparison and compulsion. Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. They both offered sacrifices. One was acceptable, one was not. And Cain was furious that his sacrifice wasn't as good as Abel's. And even though he had a chance to make it a good sacrifice, he wasn't content with that. And he got so frustrated that turned into anger. He called Abel out into the field, and in an act of rage, he killed his brother. 8 verses later in the story, Abel is dead. Because as soon as we leave intimacy, peace with God, and a place with God, we get in a hostile environment where we are comparing ourselves with people, and we have the tendency towards compulsive behavior, and we do crazy things. And that's what I think God is trying to mirror to us in 1 Samuel 17. When he shows us this picture, he doesn't have to give us this part of the story, but he wants us to understand that vulnerability isn't the worst thing in the world. And so David says, now that he's got all this stuff on him, covering up the little boy so that you can't see that he's just a little boy, you can't see that he's just a kid, he's got all this stuff on him. He says in the middle of verse 39, I cannot go in these because I'm not used to them. So look what he did. He took them off. In other words, he just pulled the covers off. He said, you know what? I'm going to push the drugs aside. I'm going to pull the curtain back, and I'm just going to say, this is who I am. This is really me. And then he picks up, it says in the text, he picked up his staff in his hand. He chose 5 smooth stones from the stream. He put them in his pouch, in his shepherd's bag. And with a sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over, and he saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome. He wasn't even a menacing-looking boy. He wasn't even a mean-looking boy. He wasn't even an ugly-looking boy. He was a handsome boy, a ruddy boy. And he despised him, and he said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And he said, come here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and to the beasts of the field. And I'm telling you, if you're trying to cover up, that's the moment where you're looking for a cover-up. That's the moment where you're looking for a smoke break. I mean, you are. You're looking at Goliath right in that moment, and you're saying, you know what? Would it be possible if I just stepped out and had a cigarette right now? Because the last thing I just heard you say was that you are going to take me and devour me and send me out to the beasts of the field, and the birds of the air are going to have my flesh. And I think I need to just go back and have a drink, and I'll be right back and pick back up here where we left off. David was so vulnerable. But he also was incredibly confident. And the reason why he was confident, because he wasn't isolated when he walked into the valley of Elah. He walked into that valley with intimacy with his God. And he might have been exposed, but he was not alone. And that's what he says to the giant. He said to him, verse 45, you come at me with a sword and a spear and a javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. And this day the Lord will hand you over to me. He didn't try to hide the vulnerability. He just leaned on the ability of God. This is the beautiful thing, that in this word, vulnerable, is the word able. And if we'll focus on this word and not this part of the word, we'll not vulner. We are with a God who is able. It's not about my weakness. It's about a God who is able. And this God who is able is going to do in me right now, even in my weakness, even in my youth, even in me being a little boy, even with just 5 stones, God's still big enough to accomplish his purposes and his plans in this moment. So when we feel vulnerable, what do? When we feel vulnerable, when you and I feel vulnerable, what do we do? When you're feeling all those things because of whatever it was is brewing down in your heart, and it makes you feel angry or tired or weak or feel like you know that you're less than what everybody thinks you are. When it makes you feel unsure, when it makes you feel like you're tired from being overconfident all the time, it makes you feel like you don't have any confidence. What do? And I think in that place, we have to find God in the unmasked middle. We have to find God right in the unmasked middle. So what do you mean by that? Well, we have 2 choices, and I love this word vulnerable because it gives us a beautiful picture tonight. This V provides for us, I think, an opportunity. And in this moment, the path diverges. And we can take route number 1. And route number 1 is when we feel vulnerable, we feel unable, we feel inadequate, we feel like we're at the end of our rope, we feel like we can't really cope anymore. When we feel like that, we have the opportunity to cover and to get some drug to help us cope. As soon as vulnerability comes, we have the option to cover and cope. But we also have another option when vulnerability comes. That moment of weakness is the best thing to propel us to the person of Jesus. And we have the option when we feel our most vulnerable of actually taking the other route and running to Jesus. And saying, I feel vulnerable. And I'm not going to cover it up. And I'm not going to go try to find something to help me cope. I'm just going to run as fast as I can to Jesus. Because when we do, this is what happens. Number 1, we find the freedom of admitting where we are and who we are. Hello? Hey, the church hasn't been very good at this, but we find the freedom of admitting. Have anybody been to rehab here? Anybody in an AA program or an NA program, and you go to that group and you sit in that circle, and what happens? The first person starts and says, hello, I just want to start off. My name's Terry, and I'm an alcoholic. And after him, Jennifer pipes in. She goes, hi, I just want to let you know my name's Jennifer, and I'm an alcoholic. And then Bill goes, and he goes, I'm Bill, and I'm here tonight because I'm an alcoholic. Now, we're adding a bunch more words around that because we're wanting to go to, Jesus. Okay, you may have a giant called alcohol in your life, but you're a son, you're a daughter, you're forgiven, you're redeemed, you're justified, you're a somebody, you're a resident right now. Inside of you is the power of the living God. But we admit, we say, I'm weak. Hey, hello, people, I'm weak, I'm vulnerable. If you're not vulnerable, congratulations. If you have no weaknesses, congratulations. I hope that is a beautiful life for you. But most of us in here are less secure than we let people know that we are. And we're struggling with things that people don't often think about us. And the freedom comes in admitting as we run to Jesus, this is what's true about me. That's so that we can find the joy of him embracing us like we are. Accepting us in his love. Hello? Infusing us with his life. Because he doesn't want to leave us up here, so that then he can do the gospel and exchange in this moment his strength for our weakness, so that he can show us that when we are vulnerable, he is able. And we always have this opportunity, don't we, to become addicted to Jesus. Addicted to grace and addicted to Jesus. I want to live my life addicted to this reality right here. If I will admit what's real in my life right now, Jesus will embrace me right here and right now. He will accept me in his love right now. He will infuse into me his very life right now. It is Christ in us, the hope of glory. I'm crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. It is possible for him to infuse his life into my life when I admit where I am in life. If I'm trying to cover all this up and cope with this with some drug, I'm never going to experience the infusing life and power of Jesus. And I'm never going to know what it means for him to exchange his strength for my weakness. But this is at the bottom of where we've got to get to if we're going to be free from this giant called addiction. We got to be people who are comfortable with the phrase being said about us. They are Jesus freaks. Grace addicts, Jesus addicts. I think sometimes in the church, it's a pejorative term to call somebody a Jesus freak. Oh, that guy's just crazy about Jesus. I talk about Jesus all the time. Got to be with Jesus, loves Jesus, leaning on Jesus, trusting in Jesus, calling on Jesus, filled up with Jesus, can't get enough of Jesus. It's all about Jesus. My hope is Jesus. Like Jesus, 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 Jesus. Jesus person's a Jesus freak. And we're using that term kind of like there's something wrong with them. And I think the church needs a whole lot more Jesus freaks, a whole lot more grace addicts. Because grace has a name, and his name is Jesus. And there are people in this church who will drive to the worst part of town and risk your well-being to get a fix in the worst part of this city. You will get there. There are stories that don't get on the front page of the news in our town all the time of these beautiful, smart, amazing kids from the suburbs driving down to the hood to get their fix and ending up dead on the side of the road from a heroin overdose in our town. And then there are people in the inner city in our town. Same thing, everybody, doesn't matter where you're coming from. And people will do the craziest things to get their drug. And as soon as somebody gets too excited about Jesus, we call them a Jesus freak. I'm telling you what, we've got to understand that vulnerability can either lead us up a road to covering and coping, or it can push us up a road to saying, Jesus, you are my only hope, and I am clinging to you in this very moment. That's what Paul was saying. I close with this, 2 Corinthians chapter 12. 2 Corinthians 12, this is what Paul said. The leader of the New Testament church, a hero of the faith. And this is his own confession, verse 7. He says, to keep me from becoming conceited, because of these surpassingly great revelations, there was given to me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. Anybody feel like there's a messenger of Satan tormenting you? Anybody got a thorn in your flesh? Well, some of the thorns in our flesh, are adversarial kinds of things. But a lot of the thorns in our flesh, God actually puts the thorns in our flesh. The theologians debate about this. Did Paul have an illness? Was it his singleness? Was it a relationship? Was it somebody who just was dogging him the whole time? Did he have a blog critic who was coming online every time he tried to plant a new church and telling everybody why that church wasn't a good idea? We don't know exactly what the thorn was, but we do know God put it there. And you're like, oh, okay, you lost me right there. Why would God put a thorn in my flesh? Isn't His purpose for me to bless me and not curse me, to give me a future and a hope, not to harm me? Isn't that His purpose, Jeremiah? Well, when He put the thorn in Paul's flesh, He wasn't trying to hurt Paul. He was actually trying to make him stronger. He was trying to help him understand that the power supply was greater than he actually even thought it was. And so this is how he says it. He didn't like it. He said, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord. You're like, 3 times? I prayed 333 times. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, Jesus now, in red in the middle of 2 Corinthians, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Weakness is our friend, and vulnerability is our greatest asset as we walk with God into the valley of Elah. That's what he said. He said, okay, I've gotten this so much, people. Listen, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses. I'm not trying to cover them up. I'm not looking for a drug to numb myself from them. I will actually boast about my weaknesses. I will boast about them so that Christ's power may rest on me. Nobody has ever done something great for God that didn't have a great thorn from God. You're like, where'd you get that? Jacob wrestled with God, and he limped all the rest of his life. Peter, on this rock I'm going to build my church. And Jesus said, I've given the devil permission to sift you, bro, because I need you tested and refined by the fire. John took us up into Revelation. He's in a work camp his entire life until he was an elderly man doing slave labor in a rock quarry until the day that he saw heaven and told you and me about where we're headed in our lives. Paul was blinded by his vision of Jesus, physically blinded. Jesus pierced so that the thorns that went on his head could release the drops of blood that would liberate you and me. And when God wants to use someone greatly, He wounds them deeply. Oh, not abusive wounds. The testing of life that puts us into that position of experiencing the power of God. And you can't find a hero in these pages that didn't go through the thorny bush of trial and tribulation. And everyone has the same story. Therefore, now on the backside, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness so that Christ's power may rest on me. That's why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecution, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. When I am weak, then I am strong. Now, if you just got to church tonight, that's the greatest thing you've ever heard. If you're borderline oversaved, you think I just misspoke. You're like, no, I think you got that one wrong, Louie. I think I remembered all the days growing up in church. I think it's in when I am weak, He is strong. Remember, when I am weak, he is strong. No, we're reading it correctly. Paul said, when I am weak, I am strong. Do you want to be strong? Do you want to be a stronger student, a stronger husband, a stronger wife, a stronger parent, a stronger employee, a stronger leader? Do you want to be a stronger church builder? Then celebrate your weakness by admitting where you are, letting Jesus embrace you like you are, accept you in his love, infuse his life into your moment, and exchange his strength for your weakness. And then you'll be walking on supernatural waters going, I'm telling you, it is not Christ, it is not I, but it is Christ in me. Trust me, it is not me, it is Jesus in me. Trust me, this ain't me, this is Jesus doing something in me that I cannot do on my own. And when I am weak, I